Welcome to the Sacred Rebellion podcast, the space where truth isn't filtered, sovereignty is sacred, and the rebellion is a return to self. This isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering. And we're here to break the trance of comfortability, reclaim our gifts, and rise as the embodied rebels we were born to be. Here we journey with the wild hearts, the way showers, and the visionaries who chose their truth over comfort, their mission over fear, and their soul over the system. This is where the coded ones come to speak. The ones who didn't fit in because they were never meant to, and the ones who turned their pain into power and their story into their medicine. So drop in, take a breath, and let's remember who we are, one sacred rebellion at a time. Welcome back to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where sovereignty leads, systems are questioned, and the cosmic truth always finds its way home. Today on the Sacred Rebellion podcast, Kevin joins us today. Kevin's story is one of survival, heartbreak, devotion, and full body remembrance. From bullied and broken to burnout and bankruptcy, to living out of his car and overdosing on psychedelic journey gone wrong, Kevin's path has been anything but linear. But through it all, he kept choosing life, choosing healing, most of all, choosing love. And now he's not just teaching self-love, he embodies it. His story is a walking activation for anyone who has ever felt like they were far too gone, too heartbroken, or too ashamed to rise. You're going to hear the raw truth today and what really it takes to reclaim yourself after abandonment, betrayal, loss, and internal war. Let's dive into this real soul-spilling conversation with Kevin. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think a lot of people are going to relate to your story. And I will tell you, like, when I was reading through your stuff, I cried like through part of like your story. And I loved the photos of like you as a child and just the raw and vulnerability on your page that like everyone gets to see that glimpse of you, right? And everyone gets to know there's no hidden secrets. There's no bypassing. It's like, this is my story. This is how I came to be. This is how I took my pain and I turned it into medicine, which is what the Sacred Rebellion podcast is all about. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thank you. I was just saying, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Take us back to what was the moment that cracked you open that made you say, I can't live like this anymore?
There were a few of them. Which one? I feel like I've done that a few times in my life. First one was pretty early on, and I think that kind of sets the tone for everything. You know, I'm 31 years old now and been quote unquote on the path of this stuff for a while. And I think it's because I kind of had a rude awakening pretty early on, had to grow up pretty quick. And just from my own pain of not feeling like I fit, needing to be something instead of who I was in order to get love and being made fun of for my tender and artistic heart. There was a lot of that early on. And so I just hit this breaking point where I was like, screw it, I got to do something different. So dove in all into fitness and thinking that was going to save me. And in a way it did, you know, like the people who were asking me for fitness advice started, or that were picking on me started asking me for fitness advice. And I started building a business on that. And then kind of overcame my shyness through my obsession with fitness and working out, and really also found my voice, and I found community, and I found a lot of things in the gym. But then that came with a lot of other things that I wasn't aware of, shadows, you could say, right down the road that led into a lot of body dysmorphia, a lot of binge eating disorders, a lot of a lack of freedom. Really, it was a mask. And I talk about this in my book. I actually have a book coming out, we'll get into that later, called Perspectives. And the whole premise of the book is how you change when you change how you're seeing, what you're seeing changes, even though it's always been that way. And so instead of trying to heal more or do something, what if it's just we dance with life differently, the things that come up and how it comes up, how things show up? What if it's just how we relate to everything? And really, you know, I was relating to everything from a lens of scarcity. I was relating to everything from a lens of shame and didn't know it, and ego, and also didn't know it either at the time. And so, yeah, it's like I was met with a lot of positives. It seems like a lot of good things were happening in my life, but it had these hooks and shadows that were like keeping me stuck. And I didn't really realize it until further down the road. And I think that happens a lot with deceptions, right? When we can zoom out and be like, well, this is so beneficial. It is. And what does it cost you in the end? And I think that perspective to have forward thought and think far out instead of the immediate is really beneficial. So anyway, I didn't really learn that until later on, because I went through many other, what the fuck am I doing, reaching the end of myself moments until seeing that perspective. But I brought that up because in the book, I have this diagram where, you know, there's horizontal change and vertical evolution. So I changed from binge eating to manically counting calories. I was counting calories before, but in a different way. Then I was like, okay, I'm gonna like structure, right? So I went from having this body dysmorphia problem, binge eating disorder, after competing in fitness shows and bodybuilding shows and all of this, right? Did a number on my association with food and what I looked like. And so I developed that disorder. Well, I changed to counting calories and started being healthier. But to my soul, in terms of spiritual evolution, it was on the same plane.
Yeah, it's the
And
same
that was my
energy.
first, right. And so, as far as my soul, I was still tormented by this spirit of control. And it looks like change and it looks like freedom. It looks like different. It looks like I rebelled, right? But it's a false rebellion because you're still caged.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it until, now 10 years looking back, and I wrote about it in the book. But anyway,
Yeah.
I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent,
No,
but
you're good.
that was the first time when I was like, I got to do something different. I was severely heavily medicated for ADD, ADHD, sleep apnea, allergies, asthma, doing breathing treatments all the time, inhalers. Like I was a sick kid, and I was also eating crap.
Hmm.
Didn't Had a pretty sedentary lifestyle, playing video games. So I needed a change, right? And the change from that going into fitness was a change horizontally, but it still wasn't a vertical evolution.
Right.
And, that vertical evolution and the spiritual evolution to me didn't really happen until later, and I thought it happened then because everything started changing in my life, and that was my identity changed, my surroundings changed, so I must have changed, right? But I was still tormented by the same shame that ran into my life. Now I was just shaming myself and enacting it out through fitness and beating myself up and restricting myself and everything else. And so I like to take that perspective of viewing it in the spiritual and not just from a personal development lens or even a somatic lens or a mindset lens, but looking at the whole.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up because this is a perfect depiction of the Phantom Matrix. And I know that's kind
Oh,
of like a woo-woo kind of conversation is I tell people, I was like, just because you quote changed, it's the same energy. It's the same frequency. It's the same pattern. It's the same belief system. So instead of getting external shame, you now internalized it as I have to shame myself in order to change. And that is a perfect example of the Phantom Matrix because I explain it like this, and maybe you're familiar with the Phantom Matrix, but the Phantom Matrix is, do you remember as a kid when we had two pictures that were exactly the same, but they just had slight differences and you had to find the differences. And it was sometimes like, I don't know about you, but I was like, shit, I can't find anything different with this picture, right? That's the Phantom Matrix. And man, I'm getting like full goosebumps because this is such a good context because it looks the same. It looks everything the same and you can see change in your reality and it starts to move. But just like you explained, it's those false hooks. It's the distortion and it's just slightly distorted that a lot of people get stuck in that. I don't even like to use the word stuck, but in a loop, right? In that phantom system that essentially is like the matrix within a matrix, right? Where it's like, I changed, my body changed, I feel better in my body, but why do I still not like myself? Because you're in the phantom matrix.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, and that it's the same concept. Yeah, I've never heard of
Yeah.
it put that way, but
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
That's the spiritual concept of it. If you look at I don't know if you ever looked at the Ascension Glossary, but she talks about it. I think it's a she that wrote that, but she talks about it in there. And I read the information. I was like, okay, spirit, give me an actual metaphor that I can actually like ground in an anchor to know what the hell. Cause I think a lot of times, like when you read spiritual context, it's like, holy shit, that was like out of my brain, like
Yeah.
and so I'm always like, I'm really big on metaphors because that's how the mind works, right? So I'm like, give me a metaphor, and they're like, a picture and a picture, and that was like the perfect depiction. And I tell people, like, when they're in their loop with their healing, that's often what happens is like you make a little shift, but you still are playing out the same loops and patterns because you didn't actually change the root issue, which was self-love. Yeah, interesting, huh?
It is. And it's crazy how many people are in it and don't realize they're in it until you get to that point where you're like, I've reached the end of myself. Like there's something, I've done all of these things, but I still feel the same, right? Or it hasn't solved my loneliness or my depression or whatever the thing is that you've been running from. It just distracted me for a time and things look a little different,
Yeah, 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 exactly. And you're like, oh, well, people like me now. It's that self abandonment, right? Where it's like, if I abandon myself, then maybe someone will like me.
which is the biggest lie that we believe.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. What did the version of you who was sleeping in the car needed to hear the most? Because I don't think I think it's actually, especially with kind of what the financial stuff that's going on in our reality, I don't think it's too far off for a lot of people right now.
I'll say this: that guy, early 20s, 21, 22 ish. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I left, drove to Dallas, messed up living situation off of Craigslist that I got myself into. Just ended up living in my car because I was like, screw this. Then ended up car broke down and sold it for parts to just get by. And I was living in a fantasy, trying to make an online business work that wasn't working, very stubborn, living in a false reality, very egotistical, thinking that I was better than everybody else, even though I'm in this situation, right? I was, man, and also very scared, very hurt, rightfully so, by a few things, and just had a heartbreak and a relationship end. And thankfully, I didn't have too many days there. I'll tell you what I needed to hear, and then I'll tell you what I wish I would have known.
Sure.
And I'll tell you how I got out of the situation. I wish somebody had told me everything's okay. Like, you're right where you need to be.
Mm.
Because I can look back and see exactly why that happened, and I wouldn't want to do it again. Don't get me wrong, but like, I'm grateful because of what I learned. I was so attached to material things because of how I grew up and a few other things that I needed that season, and then a few years afterwards where I was nomadic and traveling the world, where I just had a backpack to my name,
Hmm.
and I actually felt what it was like to live without things and that I was okay without them, which was so
Hmm.
counterproductive to how I was raised, quite honestly. So I needed to go through that. And I wish that somebody would have told me that, like, hey, everything's okay. You're right where you need to be. I never heard those words. I was constantly striving for the next thing, to change my situation, whatever, whatever. And then I also wasn't. I had a fat ego, and I wish somebody would have told me to get over myself because here I am begging for food, totally capable to get a job, and and I chose suffering over laying down my ego.
Yeah.
And so eventually it broke, which is how I got out of the situation. I asked a friend for $20, and he like knew my situation, and he rolled his eyes, and I'll never forget it. He like opens up his wallet and hands me $20. Or I asked him for like five, but he hands me $20, and he looked me dead in the eyes and goes, "Get your shit together." And that was just a dagger in my gut. And I was like, okay. And the following weeks after that, I picked up 4 jobs and worked my ass off, barely slept for 2 months straight, and nearly lost my memory recall just to, get a place. I don't even know how I got approved for an apartment, but I did, and furnish it and all this stuff, and or even how I got the jobs. It's a whole story of just, I was supposed to happen, synchronistic, but and literally God handing it to me and going, "Cool, you got another. Like, I'm going to give you another chance to start over." And so it was a lot of humility that I had to go through at that time because I did have such an ego, and then there was a little bit of the phantom thing that happened too because I didn't disrupt my ego entirely because here I am, what, almost 10 years later, still dismantling my ego and getting humbled again. So
I
wish
don't
I
think
don't
that
have
ever
to that.
stops, does it?
I was about to say, I don't think that ever stops, but I'm in a new transition in the moment, and I'm going through it all differently, I guess I should say. But
Yeah, I can attest to that too. Like I feel like I'm kind of in that season too, where it's like essentially just going back to self, right? Going back into not necessarily, I feel like my whole entire awakening have always been like, oh, I've got psychic friends, I can lean on them, they can do, where this time it's like, I actually don't want to do that. I don't want to lean on anybody. I want to actually utilize my tools, know how I do, preach the preach, talk the talk, and move inward into that you know how to fucking change your reality, so fucking do it,
there you go.
you know. And I think that comes with maybe age. Maybe it's like I'm 38, so maybe that's like an age thing. I don't know, like I'm about to hit that 40 number, who knows. But it was just like that. And they say you have like a really big awakening between age 35 and 44. I don't know why, but that's like a huge age that you have an awakening. And I feel like, I mean, I've been on this journey for a while. I feel like each child I have like a massive like
I'm
purge,
sure that's a big portal, yeah.
yeah, every child. I'm sure a lot of women can probably attest that. I think men probably go through the same thing, where it's like every time you have a child or a new relationship or a life event that's like completely alters your entire reality, it shifts so much of you. And I feel like with what's happened in the last 6 months, I don't know about you, but I've experienced a huge identity shift.
Oh yeah. What do you feel like? What do you mean by what's happened in the last 6 months?
For me, in the last 6 months, I feel like I've had a huge upgrade in like identity, my work, my worth, relationships, and really just purging anything that is not at a certain level of what I know I'm here to be.
Yeah, this year's been a lot. Foundations like this year, my word for the year was to build, and all that's been built is foundations. I'm just getting rocked and slammed and dug deep and excavated, and I'm like, okay, God, I said, get it.
Yeah.
It was being worked on, and I see that as, building me, and that's the best thing that I could ask for ultimately. Even though I wanted to build a business or I wanted to build whatever thing, what's being built and created right now is different. I sense the spiritual evolution. I sense it's not just change,
Hmm.
which is what I've gone to every single time before, like the only card that I know how to play type of
Yeah.
thing.
Same.
And so, yeah, and I just feel like I'm playing a different matrix or different reality, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's very different. And I feel like it's like the spiritual warfare is a whole different level this year than it's ever been.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like the channel, I don't know about you, but it's like the channel's more clear, the downloads are easier to get, but the doubt is fucking loud.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. But the spiritual warfare thing is really real. And that's why I think it's important for people to understand, number one, that we're even in spiritual warfare. I just want to talk about that for a second,
Yeah,
because
let's do.
there's, if you think that living in spiritual warfare is living in fear and fear based, which some people have told me, I see that perspective. Because if everything's love and light and then there's nothing to fear, then yeah, sure, there's no warfare. And then that person in warfare is just living in fear, and that's something to purge. Well, the person who's living in understanding warfare and thinking about the people who are living in freedom are like, that's dangerous.
Hmm.
Right? And so we really have to come to a knowing of reality and go, what's actually happening, and what we could say through the lens of spiritual warfare, right? If you're believing all the other stuff spiritually, then you also got to believe the warfare spiritually. I think it's cherry picking otherwise. You're picking what you want to have, a reality you want to have, or you want your view of God to look this way. So you're going to cherry pick something so that your ego gets to be safe and you don't get to change.
100%.
So are you cherry picking your reality and your existence so your ego doesn't change, or is your ego orienting to truth
Hmm.
and reality? And that's the real humility, I think. And again, I talk about that a lot in my book, of your concept of self and how you interface with reality. Because if reality is just, here's the thing, your reality is always going to be true to you, even if it's not true. So whatever you believe is going to be the game you play, with its consequences, with its rules, all of it. You're going to, that matrix, if you will, you're going to live in that matrix that you created. Now, to change your matrix or to change your life, you got to unplug from the matrix, which fundamentally requires that you disconstruct your identity of self and your beliefs, and you allow yourself to be wrong, which goes against the strongest force in human psychology, which is to be right. So
He's deep in this right now,
if
Kevin.
you want some spiritual evolution, you have to let go of being right, be willing to be wrong about some things, and in that the real change happens. Otherwise, you're still in playing the same phantom matrix, if you will, changing things with an illusion of control, an illusion of freedom, when you're really still chained and tormented by the same spirits through spiritual warfare, and you're not actually making any shifts.
You can still paint a shitty house. It's still a shitty house.
Amen.
You know, it's like it doesn't matter how much paint you put on something if it doesn't have the structure and doesn't have the aesthetics, it's still gonna look like shit.
So it took me a while to realize, like, we play our own games. Everybody's in their own reality, constructed by their associations in their nervous system, their mind construct beliefs, and their spiritual orientation or awareness. And all of that can only evolve. I'm not going to use the word change. I'm going to say evolve or devolve based on your self righteousness. And I think that's why humility is such a virtue and so
Yeah.
needed,
Yeah.
to be able to move with reality instead of playing in a reality that you made out of a lie that you believed as a kid or somebody told you, or what, you know what I mean? Like, these things go so down the rabbit hole. And so
They do.
anyway, my whole approach to the quote unquote the work has changed. Instead, because we can play the Phantom Matrix game, which now I'm grateful I have language for that now. We can play the Phantom Matrix game where we inner work ourselves to change, or we can play the spiritual humility game where you let God punch you in the face every once in a while, and you more
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately
100%. Yeah.
where
And
you're
that's
running.
exactly what will happen. And when you are punched in the face by God and you are you have to go back into the foundational aspects of yourself. And sometimes those foundational aspects need to be shattered so that you can rebuild actual foundational aspects that are built on truth and not a fucking lie.
Yeah, that's it. And so it's recognizing why we do what we do, why we have the desires we have, and understanding that level of spiritual warfare. So I talk about this in my book. Shame and needs is the or needs and shame is the chapter, but it talks about how shame is a parasite.
Sure is.
You don't, just like normal parasites in humans, you don't realize they're there, and you start thinking that you are having sugar cravings or cravings for whatever the thing is, and it ain't you at all.
Nope.
But the parasite makes you think that it's you. And the
And
same
they
thing
actually
happens.
have voices. It's kind of
Yes.
wild.
And the same thing happens with shame,
Mm-hmm.
where you think it's you, and that's the lie. Is it becomes meshed with your identity, and now you're in this cobweb of thinking that's the illusion and the lie, thinking that it's you. Then all of a sudden, you just married into a lie. Now your reality construct just morphed, and you're unaware of it. So in the beginning of the book, I talk about your fundamental identity. Who am I? You have to understand that you're a soul and a spirit. You're not your mind, you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions. You are a spirit. And if you can anchor into that, then you can start to open your eyes to see the warfare, to see the distortions, to see what you thought was you that's not actually you at all, right? And so when we can see that, we can see how shame creates certain desires, create certain needs, create certain patterned behavior in order to keep it alive. It
Yeah.
has to play this out so that you can then be shamed.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. I actually did a candida cleanse in March and it was such a catalyst. Holy smokes. I mean, I think the first week I laid in bed crying and I was like, it just, and since that point of like purging parasites, mold, and metals and all the things, it's like, I've done parasite cleansing. I've done, heavy metals and, I thought candida, but this cleanse was different. This cleanse was different. And it was I highly recommend doing a cleanse during an eclipse. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. You're extreme like me. I like it.
Yeah, I was like, my friend, when she channeled it for me, she was like, "Are you going to do this during the eclipse season?" I was like, fuck, why not? I was
Yeah.
like, let's go. So, yeah. And my husband did it with me, and he was like, that was like the hardest cleanse I think I've ever done. I was like, well, I mean, I probably shouldn't have had you doing it during an eclipse, but like I purged so many people, offers, business stuff. It was all wrapped up in this, exactly what you said, shame and lack. And it was like entangled. And
How is it
now when I
entangled? I'm curious, like
how was it
for
entangled?
people
It was
listening so that they can understand.
Yeah, it was entangled by the thought process of if I do XYZ, then I'll be worthy of this. That's the entanglement. It's so big. And I can't, it's like, I'm just going to wait till the perfect. I mean, we hear this is like in all different forms. Like, I'm just going to wait to launch my course until, this, or I'm going to hire you when I have this, that is such an entanglement of that parasitic frequency, vampiric cords, parasite shame, whatever you want to call it, tomato, tomato. It's all entangled within each other that essentially keeps you, full body chills right now, keeps you in a lower vibration in that phantom matrix that says when you have time or when this is, no, it's not when, it's when you decide. It's a choice. Big fucking difference.
For sure. I love that. And a lot of things come up during fasts, cleanses, things of that nature, right? So I love that you didn't address, and I think people can, oh, I'm doing a cleanse, and they don't look at the rest of their life. And I'm like, you're missing it. You're going to have to do it again.
It's not just physical, it's on the whole quantum. Yeah.
Uh huh.
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference with working with someone. Like, I actually worked with a practitioner, and she was like, she would text, she's a dear friend of mine, but really powerful when she puts people on cleanses. She's like, when the body tells you that it's ready to cleanse, you're going to cleanse. Whether you actually put yourself on a cleanse or not, the body's like, I'm cleansing, folks. It's going to go. And it's so true. It's like once that channel comes forward, it becomes into your awareness, you make a choice whether or not that cleanse is going to be on a whole system level. And that was my choice I made. I was like, I'm ready for the next quantum leap. Well, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I love that you brought up shame and how it's a parasite, because it is. And if you have, go ahead.
It's also very symbiotic with pride.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's the same. It's two sides of the same coin. So you'll be in shame, and then you've had enough of your shame, and you'll create a false ego on pride, and you can't hold that up anymore. And then you slide back into the shame, and it creates this ping pong. And again, it's kind of the same frequency or entity, if you will,
Yeah.
that's holding it down. They're not
Yeah.
two separate things.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I love that you use the interchangeable word of frequency and entity, because to me, they look the same. It's the same energy.
Yeah,
It just depends on how you see it in your mind's eye. Yeah,
totally. I
for
know.
sure. You say you dove into every form of self abandonment. What was the biggest one to unlearn?
It's a good question. Let me think.
You're good.
I want to say my ego. And what I mean by that is abandoning my identity in God and my reality, connection to reality, and creating a false one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What that looked like was my way, doing things my way.
Mm.
What it looked like was my will being imposed on everything. And what it looked like was doing what I wanted to do instead of acting in alignment with God and my original design or my original identity, and fabricating one that was so, again, like what I thought I needed to become in order to be loved, right? And so
Yeah.
whether that was the super hyper guy who always had tons of energy, which is then I developed a caffeine addiction,
Mm-hmm.
or the guy who was, I couldn't say no and was always there. And look, he's such a good guy because he's always there. So I couldn't ever say no and set boundaries, and struggled with that for a while.
The
Or
good guy is what I call it.
sure, totally. I had a
Yeah.
massive good guy complex. That's why I got into relationship coaching, because I realized I was a codependent people pleaser, Mr. Nice Guy that didn't have a backbone. Oh, I had a lot of work to do on myself, right? And I had,
Yeah. 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 I'm
so
married to one of those.
yeah, so that was me 10
Yeah.
years ago, and sure sometimes still pops up, but that that's what started me on this track in the first place. Was I kept getting heartbroken, and the first 3 relationships I was in ended because they had cheated on me, and I was like, what the heck's going on? And that's when I had
Mm-hmm.
to be introspective to go, what is it about me that's co-creating this?
Yeah.
And I had to
Yeah.
set that down, right? And I was like, oh, I have all these things I get to work on. And so when I started working on myself, people started asking me questions. I started giving them, what I'm reading, books I was reading, other things, and my own perspectives. And eventually a friend said it changed his marriage. And I was like, whoa, I'm 23 at the time, probably. I was like, I ain't a relationship coach. I'm so young, and what the heck? But it took me a while to sell myself on the fact that I could support people and healing from breakups, healing codependency, whatever it was that I ended up supporting people with down the road, self love. And that's just evolved over time, especially after my near death experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of us healers have that. At least, I mean, I'm the same way. I have this overgiver relationship, where it's like it's almost like a curse, but also it's our hearts. That's the heart, the energy of the heart, which is also our medicine, right? Our heart is the medicine that also has the shadow aspect of, your pain always turns into your medicine. Well, broken hearts, overgiving, the curse of the empath, which is like feeling everybody's energy, trying to change the energy in your space in order to control that energy, right? And so moving into that is where the medicine comes in, where you activate your heart and coming from a place of self-love, right? The self-love transmutes into that space where you're able to give that energy to yourself and give it to people in your reality that honor your boundaries and know that that's you. When you say no, they're like, cool, no problem. I totally see where you're at,
Yeah, for me, it was like you hit the nail on the head with control. I had to give up control and controlling it all. And it came from a good place, sure, but I had to stop controlling people's view of me. I had to stop controlling people's, like how things would go. I was imposing my will on everything around me, and it didn't look like control. It looked like love. It looked like, being faithful. It looked like so many other things. Codependency, right, is control masked as love. And so that was a big one too that I had to look at.
Yeah. And I think when you can see, especially as a masculine, when you can see, I actually said this to my spouse the other day. I said, when you realize that your codependency actually isn't giving me love, it actually brings my nervous system into like a flight space, when you actually step into your power, that actually feels more safe in someone like in a marriage. Does that make sense? When you're actually saying, you know what, I actually don't want to do that. That actually brings safety just from someone I've been married to my spouse for 16 years. I told him this actually just last week. I said, when you actually speak your truth and you actually step into what's best for you, it leaves out the guessing game, which in return, that guessing game puts my nervous system into havoc because now I'm channeling because I channel. And if you don't channel, I'm like, I'm seeing that that's not actually what you want, but you're telling me that's what you want. And it's kicking missed signals. And so in a marriage and a relationship, and I think a lot of people can relate to this in a relationship, is be straightforward. That doesn't work for
Right.
me.
Yeah, you got to be straightforward, which means you can't have any of that control stuff in the way.
Yeah.
And that can happen more of the time when your self-worth is anchored into something bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because when it's anchored into yourself, it's your mood of the day, how you're thinking, what's going on around you. Like there's so many variables. Even if it is anchored in self-love, it's got to be anchored into something bigger. Otherwise, there's so much changing of the tides that happens and life that happens that it's rocky and it's a constant effort. And I realized that again, like reaching the end of myself, where I was like, there's a lot of effort is unnecessary.
100%.
If you got
100%.
to strive to get something, you're going to have to strive to maintain it.
Yeah. Yeah. And also I love, I think Mel Robbins says, let them. And I think a lot of times, I mean, you can obviously go really toxic with that, but sometimes I think that it's okay to let your spouse have emotion without you feeling like you need to fix it or that it's your problem or that it's
Mm-hmm.
something that you need to control or it's like, oh, you're having a really bad day. Well, do you want to watch a movie or something? Like, how can I support you? Because that energy of holding support in the masculine and the feminine is really just allowing your partner to just have that space.
Totally.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about your near death experience?
Yeah. Well, I took enough Wachuma for like 30 people by accident and it expanded in my stomach. And I was high for 3 days and psychotic for a month afterwards.
What
So,
was it? Sorry, repeat what you said.
Wachuma, San Pedro,
Okay. I'm not familiar with that one. Is that a mushroom or
cactus.
it's cactus? Okay.
And it was an accidental thing. The person serving me was massively out of integrity and didn't know what she was doing. And so and am an extreme person. You could say spiritually, I brought myself there because I was like a weed brownie, had a little bit. And I was like, I don't feel anything. I'll take more. I don't feel anything. I'll take more. And then it just smacked me like a train. And I've told this story a few times on other podcasts and stuff. And people are always like, oh, you just had a bad trip. I'm like, then why did I have stomach pain for 5 years?
Mm,
Afterwards, and like I lost 30 pounds of muscle, and like there was a lot that happened on the fallout of that was not just a bad trip, and cleared out my gut microbiome, a lot of things. I probably should have gone to the hospital, but I was so terrified that she was going to get in trouble that I was like, no, I'm just going to body this. So that's what ended up happening. I don't know.
wow. Yeah, I've actually never done any form of plant medicine, but it's not that I'm opposed to it. I just think that I just have seen how it's really been taken to a level of uneducated people performing a sacred medicine that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're opening up containers, they're opening up portals. You're essentially opening up yourself to something that it's not contained.
Right.
And that's
You're
why
just
I've literally been told, do not do plant medicine. Like I've been told that.
I'm against it now. I mean, like I dabbled for here and there a little bit afterwards, and I was like, no, I'm good. Like I've seen enough. I don't need to fix myself. Like the intention that I went into that with is like, you gonna do it so I can heal. Like what the? I don't need to. I don't need that. So there's a lot of lies and deception that can go on with it. That sure, the first 8 times I did it, or 7 times, I had amazing experiences, life changing in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the fitness stuff that came with a bunch of shadow on the backside of it, so did this. And so I think, again, having that eye for the long term effects of, and I'm just like, do you want to, what are you actually signing up for instead of just a short term? And
Yeah.
that was a matrix and a reality that I am grateful that I have unplugged from.
Yeah. Well, and I think the big difference is I'm not actually opposed to plant medicine. It's the integration aspects. It's like, come do ayahuasca or come do this mushroom journey or come spend 5 days in this realm or this reality where I'm going to coach you through all these things. We're going to do all of these medicines. We're going to do all these things. And then you go home and you're back in a reality that you just unplugged from for 5 days and you're back in the reality because you know what? You haven't done the actual work. There's no integration aspect. And then you go back into your old reality. The magic's completely sucked out of you. And this is even with retreats in general. It's like sucked out of you. You're back into reality and you're back into the same vibration that you were just left because there's no integration.
That's it. It's wild.
Yeah. I've actually even said that to like people. I said, don't allow your spouse to suck your medicine because it's real.
Yeah, it is. Integrate the lack of integration piece is the big part. And I think that's another thing too. I was so impatient. I did everything fast and I wanted everything now. And that caused me a lot of pain and stuff that I'm still dealing with in my life. And I think there's just a level of like patience and maturity and everything's okay. Like I was trying to get to there, like in what timeline? Mine? Like I see how much, and again, back to my will and not God's, I was just hurting myself.
Yeah, it's
And
that
sure,
false
you could,
belief.
yeah, and sure, there's a perspective that it's like it all, everything happens for a reason, and there's a perspective to anything that you could frame anything a certain way, but there was a lot of unnecessary suffering. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I'm a little bit like you in that aspect where I just am like, okay, if I can just heal this, then this will happen. Like that was like a huge belief system that I had to debunk essentially, and find out why I tick that way. What is it that false, and it's like false hope essentially.
Right. Yeah, it's a fault. It is a false hope. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. What daily practices keep you grounded in your body and truth?
Now, going
Mhm.
on walks, talks with friends, and singing and
I love that.
reading the Bible.
Reading
To
the
be
Bible.
completely honest with you, that's my routine. I used to have an elaborate breath work and then this affirmation and this thing. I wake up, use the restroom, I down water, take a shower, I go outside, I go for a walk, I come home and read for a little bit. I'll maybe throw on some music and sing while I'm making breakfast, and then I get on with my day. Like there was so much of my life. I had a 3 hour morning routine and the cold showers and this thing and da 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 da. And I'm like,
Mhm.
dude, be a human.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, I love that you say that because that's so true.
be a freaking human, you know? And so for me right now, that's my time with God in the mornings, my walks out in nature, connecting to nature and myself. You know, I haven't been setting an alarm past few months. And so I just wake up when I wake up. Thankfully, it works for myself. So I'm able to do that,
Yeah.
you know? And instead of like waking up with an alarm and then getting up, go and downing caffeine and like jolting your system, I just lived that way for 10 years, even when I
Yeah.
was working for myself, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just in a different pace right now. There's a lot that's changing in my life and a lot of unknown and a lot shifting. And so I'm in a season of, you could say, purging. You know, I'm almost done with the parasite cleanse. I've also got diagnosed with Lyme disease, so I'm doing a whole protocol for that. So there's a huge like gear shift down regulation happening with ego death and tied into that, and a whole rebrand of my company, and putting out the book and a few other things that are coming down the road are the of that. But there's been a massive, like I said, dig deep foundational reconstruction before the new. And it's like the old's dead, the new's not quite here yet. So that's the season that I'm in where I'm just cool. I get to be here as long as I know that it's going to change. Like the biggest quote that's bringing me through this season right now is when in doubt, zoom out. Like if every day I'm so in every day and I'm like, I'm being impatient. I should launch this thing. I need to do this thing. I'm so bored. Like zoom out. It's been 6 months. Oh yeah, okay. Like I see what God's doing. Oh yeah, I see what's getting rocked in me and what's changing. And I'm also being like shown all of these ways I was doing business that's not meant to be in what's
Mhm.
next. Like there's a lot of revelation being shown to me and God working in my heart right now with in alignment with the detox, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just in that right now.
Yeah. Parasite cleanses are a huge recalibration too. I
You
mean,
know,
they
I
really are.
I used to work out every day like a savage, like crazy levels of energy. You know, yesterday I tried to work out and almost passed out, right? Like that's also, nobody really talks about that, whether it's working out or work or whatever your thing was, and not relying on that thing for like a cadence in your day anymore. That's a huge wake up call. And that's where I'm like, anything that I have leaned on that is not God, I've got to, it's being revealed to me right now. Like, yeah, it's great. Like, definitely work out. All the tools that I have, definitely going to do them. But I was going to those things before my relationship with God, and so now there's nothing else to do, right? But to build my relationship with God in this moment, go on long walks and distract myself for a little bit of time, or like grow strong with my creator, right? Like that's the options that are being presented to me. And I'm like, I'm not going to bypass.
Yeah.
And it literally is just a season. It's just a time. I'm going to come out of it, and I don't want to come out of it and trip over myself again like I was doing before with my ego and all the other ways I was doing stuff. And maybe I will still, because I'm human, but I
Yeah.
want
The
to,
imperfectness.
make best use of what's showing up.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love that you bring up the fact that like it's really important to kind of break those loops of routine, you know. I actually homeschool my children and, you know, summer actually we have more my kids swim on a swim team, so I'm up pretty early and but my son, he's not used to getting up early cuz he's homeschooled. So it's like he's like I'm like having to peel him out of bed every morning. He's like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh my gosh, mom." And he's I don't know if you do like human design or anything, but you actually remind me a lot of him, just like an older version, just that energy and that constant, you know,
Manifesting
energy.
generator.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. An emotional authority. And yeah, he's got a lot of energy and yeah, like kind of what you like your personality and the way you act is very similar to him. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
It's a big blessing, but like, oh man, I wish somebody would have told me, like, watch the caffeine or whatever the heck that was, because I just fried myself over and over again,
Hmm.
because it was like an addiction to being high energy,
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
whether it was uppers,
See, caffeine
caffeine,
does the opposite for him. It makes him sleepy.
really,
Yeah, so he has true
really,
ADHD. Yeah, he has true ADHD. So when he drinks caffeine, he's like he can drink a cup of coffee and it'll actually put him to bed.
wow, well, good for him. That's all. I wish I had that.
Yeah, yeah. So like stimulants, when he takes a stimulant of it, he has ADHD, and so if he does like any form of a stimulant, it makes him mellow.
That was me early on. I don't know what switched though, but because I used to be on Vyvanse and Oakland and all these things.
Yeah, to be able to like pay attention in school.
Yeah, it would zone me back.
Yeah, that's what stimulants do to him. It doesn't take much, but yeah, he's like, "Hey, can I have a cup of coffee and go to bed?" I was like, "Yeah, dude, go ahead, man."
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely does the opposite for him, but it's very interesting to observe like how people's story interacts with, you know, maybe someone you know or how it works. And that's why I feel like sharing our stories and sharing our experiences and sharing our pain and how we turned it into our medicine is so important and why podcast or sharing your stuff online is so essential because I think it's a way for people to connect with one another and not feel that aloneness that a lot of us have felt, especially if we are different or, you know, you're autistic, you were bullied, I was bullied. And so for me, it's like it's the ability to have that connection that we never really felt like we fit into a world that was not meant for us to fit in.
Yeah, really good way to put it. And that's the whole premise of your podcast, right? Like recognizing you're not supposed to be fit in. And I think when we give up that need to fit in, we fit in, ironically.
Yeah, you find those people that are like, yeah, I felt just like you. It's almost like it's not like a trauma bond, but it's more like an understanding for me at this point is like being able to understand that you can see someone for their uniqueness and not feel like you want to change that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how we interface with others when we get triggered is the default way how we're interfacing with ourselves. So if we can really get to that level of peace and knowing within yourself, when you get triggered, won't default to want to change other people because you're not trying to change yourself in any certain way. And I found that to be true when I just started building seeing myself through the eyes of how God sees me instead of how I think, and fabricating this sense of identity myself. That was a big shift for me.
Yeah, that is a big shift. Yep. Yep. Because I always tell people you are a fractal of God. So essentially, you have that God energy and you are that fractal piece. And so anything outside of that energy is just a lie.
Very true. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, and really that's how easy it is to actually move energy. It's how easy it is to deprogram belief system is like identifying that that's a lie. That's it.
Boom.
Boom. It's
Done. That's also spiritual warfare, by the way.
yeah.
Recognizing lies and ways that are, unholy vows that are anything against that identity. Oh yeah, that's another way to go after it.
Yep.
There's no
Yep.
there's no work to do. You call it out and tell
Yeah.
the truth, and
That's
then
right.
all of a sudden you're in a new matrix.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually work with the ego very differently than most people. So the mind, I believe, is the matrix, and the ego is actually just the relay system. It's like when you and I had VCRs, right? So the tape, the VCR system is actually the mind, and the tape is your ego. So you can actually you can pull out the tape and rewrite it, right? So I actually work with reprogramming the ego to dump files. It looks like little file systems in your mind. And I'm like, hey, Adobe, dump the file that I told you to run on the I have to work for love.
There you go. I love that.
Hey, Adobe, dump the files that I told you to run on that my worth is determined by what other people see in me. It's like those are the easy belief systems that you can essentially just recode. I call it recoding because it's what you're doing. You're reprogramming your mind, and you're able to reprogram those systems, and it's just calling it out what it is. And then you ask your ego to start a new story.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's how I work in the
It's
systems.
a good way to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like very like systematic. That's how I see things, is very like computer system. The matrix is the computer system. So it's always interesting to see how people see it in different perceptions. It's like you're like call out the lie. It's not really what God is, and then mine's a little more different, but it's the same concept.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I love that.
Yeah. So you say your story isn't over yet. What timeline are you anchoring next?
One without self-abandonment.
So good.
To put it simply.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recognizing where I'm overstretched or overextended or overstrived or being impatient, all these things, like not leaving the present moment. Yeah, sure, planning and stuff like that, but I don't know, the past few months I am just a different human, and so I'm integrating that a lot right now. And I'm also like entering this season of, again, putting out the book and a few other projects that I've been working on. And so there's stuff emerging right now where it's just a different way of doing business, a different way of showing up, a different way of everything, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like you have a lot of fun things coming ahead. Tell us a little bit about your book. When is it
Yeah,
coming out?
yeah, September 30th, as of the right now recording this. So if y'all are listening to this before September 30th, 2025, go to my Instagram and you can, it's probably in the link in bio right now, pre-order and all that stuff, get notified when it's live. Afterwards, you can go to Amazon and just search up Perspectives by Kevin Crenshaw, and you can get it there. But it's contemplative art, I like to call it. So it's little poems, parables, short stories, types of snippets of things to really like think about. And so it's not written like a traditional book where I'm just typing and talking to the reader. It's, you have to read through it a few times. It could also be a table book where you can just like open to a page and read through it, or open
I
to a
love that.
section and go to that section. And the whole thing there's interweavings of different sections referring to the others, and it was really fun to create. And I've been sitting on writing a book for like 8 years, and finally sat down to write it 9 months ago. And I was like, what if it was just fun? And then I started writing, and I'm like, I've already been writing this book on Instagram. And so I pulled from a lot of like stuff that I was already writing and expanded on it and added a lot as well. It's been really awesome. But really, it's the whole point of the book. Yes, it's fun, contemplative art, but that point is to break out of the current reality you're in to find more freedom. So very similar to what you were talking about with the Phantom Matrix, like recognizing how you might be unconsciously imprisoning yourself, not just going for horizontal change, but vertical evolution, and shifting into an unshakable identity in yourself. But in order to do that, I don't tell you anything. I'm guiding you through a thought process and through perspectives of seeing yourself, existential concepts of life, love and relationships, and God. And in those sections of the book, we're just exploring. And in that exploration, you'll start to unlock more sense of freedom and maybe even question some of your own reality. And in that, I just hope that you find a different way to dance with life,
Yeah.
which is ultimately what we're after, I think, when we're seeking freedom in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Sovereignty, right? Being sovereign. Where can people find you on Instagram?
The Heart Guy on Instagram.
Yeah. I've been following Kevin for quite a while. He's got his channel's really fun. You actually post like little, different quotes every day, or, perspective shifts and like questions. So yeah, you should definitely check him out. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you being here. So Sacred Rebellion, we just talked to Kevin. He's had so many amazing conversations about self-love, and we're look forward to checking out your book. So thank you for joining us inside the Sacred Rebellion today, where truth is sovereign, healing is holy, and your voice matters. If this episode sparks something in you, share it, speak it, push that subscribe button, and let's let the energy ripple. The revolution begins within, and you're not alone in it. Until next time, stay rooted in your power and rise in your remembrance. Have a beautiful day.